camera off, but it is always lovely to see your faces. I'm just going to let some people in the background as we're going as well, so apologies. Yeah, so just a bit of context, show and tells are just a place for the LPAs, well, you guys that are involved in the continuous fund, just to show progress and where you were, share any insights, share any struggles, and then also just open the floor for any questions and feedback from other, well, from the other LPAs in the cohort as well. So I won't rabble on at you too much, but we've got Joe from West Oxfordshire today, and Richard from East Herts, and then I've got a few bits to finish up with as well. So Joe, I'll hand over to you. Are you sharing your screen, or did you want me to drive the slides? What do we decide?
I'll drive if that's okay. So
yeah, of course.
I'm going to tell you off as well. You didn't mention Sarah Abbott from Nottingham Council, who is very much a huge part of this project, and we would not be there without the Nottingham team. So, sorry.
Shame on me. No, I will update the slides, but you're quite right to call me. I will update the slides and make sure that they get put on there before I put on the EP Hub.
I'm going to click present and keep my fingers crossed. If it doesn't work, then you're going to do it, Andy.
Okay, that's fine. And apologies, Sarah. You're sharing. Success.
No problem at all. There we go.
Okay, I think most of you know me. So I work for West Oxfordshire District Council, but also Cotswold, and we have colleagues. I basically bombed everyone's diary about 2 hours ago and said, come along. So thanks for those who managed to turn up. So our PropTech Round 4 continuous funding project focused very much on speeding up the HELAA site assessment process, specifically the HELAA for the context of our slides. And I am joined by Sarah. Can't see you, apologies. But yeah, give us a wave. So I'm going to do the first few slides so you don't have to hear from me too much, and then hand over to Sarah to do a live demo as well. Okay, so this one is just, has it moved slides? Yay, no. Has it moved on?
Yes.
Yay, thank you. Thanks, Lucy. So I just think sometimes it's important to reflect on how we got here, why we're doing this, and why we kind of obviously keep going so much. So here's just a few kind of high level stats of all of our council's previous projects. And I think for me, what always strikes me is sometimes how we can do something really quite small as an intervention. Can actually really make a big change. That 92% saving in early process for site assessments, a large part of that is just giving one principal planning officer an ArcGIS Pro license to the cost of £1,000 a year. And that just means we can instantly publish, we could do all sorts of things. So often we don't need to do these massive, big interventions. We can do small things that make quite a lot of difference quite quickly. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't solve the whole thing, but you know, like sometimes small and little and often is great. That same project around for is when we met LandClan, our current suppliers for the continuous funding as well, and also when Nottingham met them. And my notes say that that tool for their round 4 helped them sift, sort of automate the site assessment process from sort of 7,000 to 300 sites. I don't know if you wanted to add any more to that, Sarah, before I move us on.
Oh, that sounds good, Jay. That's exactly what we managed to achieve. And helped us prioritise those 300 sites as well, I think, in terms of where we wanted to put our efforts in.
Okay. So the next one is the classic, what is the actual problem we're trying to solve? We all know we need to speed up local plan making processes. 30 months is coming fast. And not only that, but there's lots of us probably on this call that are all racing to submit by the end of next year. We've also, I think it's safe to say we've all learned that there's a massive problem in insufficient GIS and data management skills and resources across the country. I think I'd say Nottingham are probably one of the few exceptions that don't struggle with that. And it's been a real pleasure working with them. And often we're sort of outdated and very bespoke data solutions, which are not fit for purpose, you know, old dying access databases, other things that are just no longer maintainable. And I just kind of wanted to focus on that for a moment. All of that led us on to how that shaped our aims and objectives. And what we really set out to do with this project was to actually create something that could be picked up by any level of GIS user. So we know that it's a problem, that we're short on those skills, but there's lots of councils with appetite. So how could we create something that is truly simple to pick up, but can also then be scaled to use more advanced kind of GIS techniques, etc. So I think that user-friendly, interoperability, and that scalable, and something that's very affordable. Again, so again, the LandClan application, not just giving them a plug, but it is at a very affordable price point, kind of under that 1,500 quid mark per user. And we very much focus as a team on our strengths, kind of working together in that agile methodology, doing weekly stand-ups, and just really creating the space and time. Time is the biggest thing. Just give yourself time to chat everything through. And I think that's what we all struggle with, is that magic word of finding the time to talk. So that moves us on. This slide is really just to illustrate the council's differences. I mean, even if you put Cotswold and West Oxfordshire side by side, they are actually neighbours geographically, but you can see quite clearly from the left image just how heavily constrained Cotswold district is. Yes, West Oxfordshire is quite constrained as well, but nowhere near as heavily. And obviously Nottingham City Council has its other challenges and constraints. So we wanted to, in the countryside, do we need to be able to filter by different use cases that you'd use kind of versus in a urban setting. So we've allowed for that in the tools. So that's me. Yay, I got off lightly this time.
Keep the slides if that's okay, Jane.
Yeah,
of course it is. Slides for me.
Yeah, just tell me when. There we go.
Afternoon, everybody. Excuse me, I've been in suddenly really coldy today. Thankful for my daughter for giving me that this morning. But so I think some of you saw this sort of talk at ADP Camp. Hopefully, we'll say I'll do a live demo shortly. But just to kind of recap on some of the bits that Joe's mentioned already. That collaboration has been really key, and I think it's fair to say it's been quite an iterative approach, Joe, and agile in terms of like, well, what do we want the tool to look like? What do we need it to do? It hasn't been we've done it and we've got it right first time by any means. Stuart is on the call also, who sits in our local plans team at Nottingham. So he's very close to the whole HELAA process within the city. So it's really, the whole project's given us this opportunity to kind of review our process. We've currently got a SHLA and a CLAA separately. With this project, we're trying to move towards having a HELAA. I've had workshops with West Ox at the outset, but wider ones with about 50 sort of LPAs, kind of really trying to get to how do we want to try and standardise what we're doing here, and trying to understand our common data requirements, not just between ourselves and West Ox, but as broadly as we possibly could, to help inform the tool specification, and ultimately end up with a kind of a vanilla template within LandClan that can meet as many of our needs as possible in terms of site assessments. If you want to come on to the next slide, if you don't mind, Jay. So that in terms of that vanilla template, that's kind of brought us to having these kind of 5 key areas in terms of undertaking our HELAA. What are our key site details? What do we need to know about planning permission on the site? Constraints checking. Can we try and work out what some of our standard national constraints are that we're all using, but also having that ability to plug in our local constraints. So for Nottingham, things like our caves. The ability to obviously record our dwellings and our yield for both our housing, but then also thinking about how we record employment as well. And then obviously the site assessment process, which is really the crux of what we want to be getting out of our HELAA. So if you want to go on to the next slide, Jay, so in terms of what that looks like in terms of the process we've built into LandClan, it's that ability to bring in a new site, all your sites, whether that's from a new Windfall site that you're wanting to assess. What does that look like as a as a process, undertaking that site assessment. How do we assess suitability, achievability and availability? And hopefully in the demo in a minute, I can show you how we've kind of enabled that all to be done in one place. You know, everyone's not having to go off to, I need to go and do this in GIS, I need to go and ask legal or property about the ownership here, I need to go off to another team to find out information on, you know, the latest planning position. So we've tried to really build in that, you know, everything happening in one place for a site assessment, which is really, you know, the crux of what LandClan does as a tool already. And then enabling us to kind of capture that overall conclusion, but then also thinking of, you know, that end product. We need to produce our HELAA, our CLR, our HELAA at the end of the day. So how can we get that back out in a useful format for us to create our maps, create our reports? So on that note, I'm going to attempt to do a live demo. So if I start sharing, it could all go very wrong. So apologies if it does. So we kind of, I think we're very, very nearly there now with our product in terms of what we want. We're happy that we've hit all of our key deliverables now. For those that aren't familiar with LandClan, hopefully you can all see the screen now. The site's workflow is really like the crux of what LandClan does in terms of enabling you to organise your site however you like into what you call pots or phases. So we've used these phases to split our sites down by our overall conclusion for our HELAA. If we get to the point where a site's complete, we can move it into there. If we have a different variation of the site, due to phasing, for example, we can move a site into archived and bring in a new site. Similarly, if we get a new windfall site in, we can bring it in to its own pot here. We can assess it, and then once we've decided what we want to do with it, we can move it and say, yeah, that site's deliverable, in it goes. Well, that bit works seamlessly at least. So we can filter on a site. So I'm just going to show you the Ireland site, which is one of the kind of key strategic city centre sites in Nottingham. So we can filter on the name, we can filter on the number, and then once you come into LandClan, you can see that these are the sections we just mentioned: the site details, planning permission. We've kind of broken down the different types of constraints. This is kind of completely customizable. So whatever type of site assessment you're doing, however you want to do it, however you want to customize for your HELAA or HELAA, you can do that. So for example, even you can change the tabs on this side. But if you went into a specific section, you're able to customize what appears in your drop-down list. You're able to say what type of field you want it to be, and you know, it's absolutely decide what you want to record locally, as well as trying to kind of say hit that standardization where we can. So key information about our site, information about our planning permissions, so we know the site has got outline, but we've also got all the related applications that have come in now, helping to inform our brownfield register. And then in terms of constraints, we've built in new functionality here that we've worked on with LandClan. So there's a lot of national data that already sits in terms of constraints within the LandClan product itself. It's not something we've had to supply, which is really helpful. But what it now enables you to do is look up and understand, like, what percentage of a constraint have I got on a site? Obviously, you know, really helpful to know it might be Flood Zone 3 on there. Before, we just had a yes answer. Now we know actually it's an absolute minute amount compared to our Flood Zone 2. We can also bring our local constraints in the same way there. And it can also have informants in there as well. So how far is it to my closest bus stop? How close is it to my nearest train stop? We can also go off and actually, you know, in terms of that, understanding the suitability of a site, look at our constraints on a map. So again, a new bit we've worked on with LandClan previously, there's option for Google, which, you know, can be great in terms of understanding, you know, looking at our site and maybe using Street View to see what's going off on there. Absolutely great. You know, not a lot of that part of the site, but, you know, helpful in your annual assessment. But with the Esri map that we've included now as well, it actually then you can click on your layers that you are interested in. What are my favorites that are my constraints that are bothering me, and that might just be critical constraints that you think, you know, I definitely don't want to be building there at all. But it enables you to view those on the map in the context of the site boundary. So they're really, really kind of helpful to have it all in one place, as I said, rather than previously officers would have had to go off and look in a separate system for that information. So you can see that exactly where does that flood zone 2 sit in relation to our site boundary. So kind of going back to that assessment process, getting to the, you know, the crux of what we're wanting to do here. The suitability, you know, as I said, you can really use the constraint information to understand what's going off there in terms of the suitability. In terms of availability, we've actually got, again, built into the system already, ownership information. So we can see within the system who owns that site, and whatever, you know, if it's leasehold, we've got every title deed there. If it's private, you're able to go off and download the report if you want to for the usual land charge fee. And once you've done that once within your organisation, you don't do that again. So that's really helpful. And then in terms of the assessment and that achievability of your site, and trying to decide, you know, what have we got there in terms of planning permission? Has anything changed in the last year? Again, you've got current planning information. This is just being fine-tuned with LandClan at the moment, but it will tell you what you've got going off there and the details of planning applications near the site. Again, we've sent our planning application polygons, so you can visualise those on a map as well. But what's really clever, and again, new to the tool completely, is we'll just come out of here for a second, is the ability to actually set up alerts. So with this, we can actually say, can you tell us if there's been any new planning applications in the last week within any of my HELAA sites? So, you know, incredibly useful. That now will get emailed to the local plan team for them to assess, can be reviewed at that point in time, can be saved up. So which is why you've also got a download option. You can bulk those all together at the end of the year if you needed and say, okay, what do I need to go and look at here? What might have changed on my sites? So just popping back to our sites workflow. So again, you know, dwellings and yield, we can fill those. That's kind of in a bit more of a grid format. We can record what we've projected on our site and what our actuals are. Something we're trying to work towards now in terms of tying it in potentially with housing monitoring. Again, at the moment, we just record projected, but that process improvement is, well, let's see if we can start to use this as a useful tool, which planners have come back and said, we'd really like to see what's actually being delivered on the sites, not just what's projected. And then obviously, when we get to the end of it, it's kind of what's our overall conclusion? What's on the what is our final status? It's that it's deliverable. And if we change our mind, we can move it between those pots. Employment obviously accounted for as well. And what we've done just in terms of bringing our data over is it's also, we've asked LandClan to bring over our kind of archive data so we can see what we had in our Access database previously, just as a reference point, to say, you know, what were we recording before and is there anything we might want to check on. So as well as sort of viewing at an individual site level, we've got an analysis tab as well, where you can go and see all of your saved sites. You can turn off your favourite layers, and you can put on your saved sites. I can view those by my workflow phases. So can you show me all of my deliverable sites? Can you show me all of my my developable sites on a map, please, with the site information? And then there's more in terms of kind of your standard functionality here that you'd expect to see in a bit of a basic GIS, really, in terms of your attribute table or doing some basic queries. So, you know, obviously we've done that sites assessment, we've got to the end of the year, we want to publish our HELAA. What we can do at the end is we can export everything out by phase or by user. So phase would be one plot at a time. By user would be everything under my HELAA logon, and take that data out as a CSV, which, you know, obviously you can use that however you want to then. Similarly, you can also do it as a PDF report, which will give you a report for each site as well. Let's see if I can try and do one of those quickly. So we can download a PDF. And we've already used this where, you know, senior managers have come to us and said, I think you've had those questions, Stuart, can you please tell us about these 10 strategic sites which are currently of real interest to us? You can pick which sections you want to include within the report, so some bits you might want to take off. So you can either do this on an individual site basis or in bulk for all of your sites. And then what you get is a report out the system which tells you anything you might want to know about your site. So planning, policy, demographics, any of the site information we just mentioned, really, in terms of flood constraints, and a general map to show you the picture. So that's kind of a quick of a whistle-stop tour. Hopefully that's useful. I think it went. Well, it didn't crash on me, so that's always a bonus.
I think you smashed it, Sarah.
It generally doesn't.
Yeah.
Definitely crash. It's very stable. So hopefully that's kind of shiny. And I think some of you might be familiar with LandClan, others not. I know people that are familiar with LandClan have gone, oh, I didn't know that we've now got that in the tool. So hopefully that's just given you a bit of a flavour of, you know, things that are going to obviously be available to all existing customers. And I think are hopefully incredibly universal in terms of improvements.
Do you want me to put those last few slides up, Sarah?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Jay. I don't know how much
Cool.
time we've got. I feel like we've used quite a bit.
You're fine, don't worry, it's all good.
There's only two of us, isn't there? Or two sets of us, yeah. There's loads on this deck because we had backup screenshots. There you go.
So yeah, I think I've shown you that, but the other space thing to note on there is, as well as those two bits, you do actually get a web feature service of all of your sites, within that it will include the phase that they're within. So you can bring that into that web feature service into your GIS, obviously join it back to your CSV if you've downloaded that, but a quick way of kind of visualizing or maybe like analyzing or dashboarding your sites, if that's something you wanted to do, Power BI or Esri dashboarding, whatever tools you have to your hand in your organisation. So I think I've probably touched on most of this, but what have we learned? Well, I think hopefully we've created a template that's at least common for most councils, and as I've said, it's completely customisable. Doesn't even have to just be used for your HELAA. It can be used for however you want, to record whatever you want about your sites. It might be planning, it might be property, it might be housing. I think, you know, we've also recognised that those products don't solve everything. I think it's fair to say, Stuart, it's really helped us kind of really kind of scrutinise what we're doing as we've gone through the process. Like, well, why are we even recording that piece of information? And why is that in that field over there? And it's in that field over there. So it's really helped, you know, we've had to put that effort in. Like you said, Joe, it's that time that we need. But I think we're happy to say, Stuart, that we are going to be creating a lot of efficiencies with this tool. So it's certainly been worth the effort.
Sure.
And then I think we've seen this before, most people I think here, but you know, it still is that quest for standardisation. I think there's so much more to be done. In so many ways, it would be great if we all just got told this is what you should be recording for your HELAAs, but you know, it is really quite limited what is out there nationally. I think a lot of us are trying to unpick and solve the same problems and put a lot of time and effort into it. But I think certainly this project's helped. I think there's still a lot more we can do. It's just that time and resource to do it really now. So I mean, I guess just on that, it's kind of what do you guys think? I suppose kind of asked this at the ADP camp, but what more needs to be done? I suppose if you're LandClan users, is there anything you think else that might need to be done within the tool? But what else can we do in terms of standardisation as well? We've got more improvements we want with the tool, which LandClan are well aware of. You know, it's never going to be done, but I think for now we're there. But you know, there's always more that we'd like to do. That's us, I think. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah and Joe. That was brilliant. And yeah, I agree with Alfie. It's not for the faint of heart doing a live demo on a call. So thank you so much, Sarah. That was amazing. Lucy, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. That looked really good. I think we've done a similar project with urban intelligence last year, and I know Joe has looked at we try to look at standardization and a standard list. So yeah, it's really good to see kind of how you guys have done that with LandClan, and I definitely really like those PDF outputs. I might want to push urban intelligence for that too. I had two kind of maybe slightly more specific questions. One of them is how you've dealt with more sort of qualitative input from specialist consultees, because I think we found that even though the automation is brilliant, you still need some of that qualitative input. And we're still going through that. We've got options to do that, but it's still a little bit more work than we expected, because some of the consultees just give it to us in an Excel spreadsheet, and we still doing the copy and pasting in. And I just wondered whether you found a solution for that.
I don't think it's something we really looked at too closely yet, Stuart. It's fair to say, isn't it? I think just partly in terms of where we are in the pipeline with our HELAA currently and our local plan, but it's probably something when we go to call for sites next year at some point.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
But no, it's Did I add to that, Stuart, at all? Or?
No, I think, in some ways we've been quite a good test case with this, because we've been in a position where most of the new sites getting added to the HELAA have been windfall sites primarily from the planning application process. Our next use of the product, once it's fully developed, will be for like a proper call for sites for local plan review, which is when we have to start engaging with that kind of aspect as well. But yeah, I don't think we've got a good answer for that yet, and I think we still will be in a bit of a clunky situation of doing a bit of copy and paste on terms of that process. But also maybe it's the advantage of us is that we've been able to do these in sequences, get the easy part done, and then tackle the harder parts maybe a bit later on that.
I think what there is, I suppose, just to expand on that, there's no option for us to kind of like bulk update records in LandClan, but that's something that they are very supportive of, and they've basically like mapped our data over so we can run that again if we need to. So it's something that certainly would be possible, is it not being too frequent, if you wanted a new, bring that in bulk, that is something that could be run if needed.
Yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I'm thinking in terms of a call for sites form, if that was done using geospatial tools, so long as your fields connected into your attributes, and that would pull through into LandClan, and then you would be able to run that. It would just populate those common fields, I guess. So it's the great challenge of the development industry using our systems rather than see attached, here's a whopping great big PDF, guys. But we know that's a problem, full stop. Like, as a group, we've all been banging on about it for years. Still haven't found a way to stop it happening. Let me know if you do. But yeah, I think we haven't touched on that yet, and for us, I think the next stage, thinking about it even just from Cotswolds, is because we have such a high landscape impact that needs to go to landscape officers. So would they put their assessment directly into LandClan, or would they, like, we haven't worked that stage through, to be perfectly honest, but we're quite kind of, I think this, for that sort of that section of the process, we're quite pleased with where it's at right now.
It's looking good.
Thank you, Lucy. That's helpful to kind of, I suppose, thinking ahead what we might want to do next as well.
Can I ask one very specific question that I just spotted? It was call authority layers. Do they work with LandClan? Because they're the only national layers that we can't get to work because of the call authorities' data protection or
the current answer is no. So that's where
okay.
I know LandClan having those conversations, but that is the exact barrier. Like, as you said, it's the licensing, because how do they trust that LandClan are only going to release that to local planning authorities and not everybody. But because you've got the means for the local constraints anyway, we can publish those up through our GIS. So we'll make them work that way until such time they're able to resolve the licensing restrictions. So that is what's really nice, is we can publish our local constraints via a GIS web service, and they can be brought into LandClan, as well as the national constraints built into their data store.
Okay, I'll need to investigate that further, because our GIS officer kind of said no because of the license restrictions, but yeah, I might push him on that. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Sarah. Lisa, I saw your hand go down. Did your question get answered?
I didn't really have a question, but I was going to comment that we're at that stage now that as we're finalising our allocations, we're starting to have to build in some more of the specialist constraints, and we are finding that can be a bit of a challenge. And our main thing we're trying to draw on is the individual layers. I think Jesse's actually put a little bit of information in the chat as well. I saw something start to arise on how we're addressing that, but that's a challenge we're getting. And I think one of the biggest aspects of that is there's no standardization across different services. So over things like the NHS, over for us, we're a 2-tier authority, so the education data, we don't have all that sort of data in a standardized form. And going forward, if I was looking at where we wanted to be in 5-10 years time, the ideal situation would be to have much more standardization across different organizations on how we manage these data sets.
Thanks, Lisa. Richard, you've been waiting patiently with your hand up.
Yeah, it was a similar comment really, because I mean, I'll go through what we've been doing on the Core for Sites tool in a moment, but we have now got to the point where we're trying to assess the sites and fit them into a strategy for the new district plan. And we are getting specialist advice, and key to that is the county council. And the county council's advice is fragmented across several departments. You've got transport, you've got education, you've got ecology, you've got landscape, all sorts of things, and they all want the data in different formats. The main consultees are the transport highways consultees. They do Core for Sites all over the county, and they have a particular way of dealing with that. So they want to use their system to assess our sites, not our system to assess our sites, because they want an audit trail of what they've done and what they've returned. And you know, they've got a legacy system that doesn't fit with ours, so they want to do it in their own way. The county council themselves, as I think Lisa touched on, they have their own systems as well. So the lead local flood authority have their own system. The Leeds team, which covers ecology, archaeology, design, have their own system. So I think it's a real problem. I think if you can crack it at West Oxfordshire and Nottingham and tell the rest of us how to do it, that'd be great.
There is the option within LandClan.
It's a challenge, Richard.
Thought about, but that's been thought about in terms of consulting. Obviously, you know, it's an online system, it's not internal only. It's obviously got a log on to get onto it, but you can share whichever sites you want with other users. So if there's certain ones you needed comments from a consultee, I don't really see, I suppose, Jay Stewart, the reasons that you wouldn't be able to maybe open up some bits or have a list of sites to get comments on. Certainly internally, but possibly between partners as well if you needed.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Jesse. Sorry, you got your hand up.
Hi everyone. So part of what the whole LandClan platform does is it gives you a standalone service which is separate from the ArcGIS ecosystem itself, or the Esri ecosystem itself. Now, for some of the things that you would want to do, it's important that at the council level you have a full-fledged Esri license, Esri Pro license for that. So if you're having consultants who are bringing in data for you, those can be done on the Pro license desktop service, and then you can publish them to your LandClan account. And that's part of what we're doing in Basildon, and that has also helped us in terms of how we use LandClan and also how we achieve what we're trying to do. But it's really important that you have the license and you have an administrator or GIS administrator that is able to do that for you in terms of having doing your spatial join or your tabular join or even the extra metadata join or the attribute joins for you to be able to publish on the ArcGIS service and then on the LandClan service, and then you're able to carry out the multiple level of analysis or restraints that you want to effect in terms of also the sharing rights too for the team and all. And that has been effective for us at the Hylton level.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's really helpful. And I think what we've also found beneficial is that with LandClan is that, yes, you're right, Jesse, you do need a minimum of a viewer license as an Esri license as well. Depending on where you're at as an organization. So if you've got like that expertise there with somebody already managing ArcGIS Pro and things like that, it works beautifully and you can do a lot more yourself. But also if you're at a very basic entry level, you can even draw your sites in LandClan yourself. Like you don't actually need that data set in an advanced way. So that's what I was talking about when it's like, this can be used from a really entry level without wanting to be rude to anybody, because, you know, like we're all at different places, but then it can be scaled up quite quickly because it works so seamlessly in that kind of classic interoperability word. It makes it, then you can keep spinning it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something we know also, I suppose, worth saying, Joe's on Esri's roadmap in terms of improving that functionality around editing as well, because they've talked to that. It was about that. Do you want to be able to, because you can only edit on the Google map at the moment, so it's obviously not great in terms of accuracy. Fine if you just want to have some like rough idea of where your sites are, but not for managing your SLA. But I know kind of they're thinking like, well, can we get it to edit it more how you would in a GIS, that you can snap to master map and get their sites accurate and give the user within LandClan more control over the sites. Sorry, Andy, I just thought I'd add on to.
No, it's all good. I feel bad for jumping in, but thank you so much. I would encourage you, if there's more questions, and drop them in the chat, and obviously use our Slack channel as well. But I'm just aware we've got 20 minutes left, so I want to make sure we give Richard enough time. So Richard, I'm going to hand over to you. Did you want me to share my screen, or did you want to share your screen?
Yeah, can you share your screen, please?
Yeah, of course. Right, 2 secs.
Thank you.
Just jump on it.
Thanks. Okay, so thanks for inviting me. I am faint-hearted, so there won't be any live demos here. I'll try and go through what we've done. There is a video embedded into this that goes through the tool that we've got. I think maybe it's quite a long one, so maybe I'll skip the video and sort of tell you what's in it, and you can go back and have a look at the video to explain the Call for Sites tool that we've developed. It's quite a useful little video, but perhaps a little bit long for the time we've got left. So I'm Richard Crutchley. I'm at East Herts Council. I'm the planning policy team leader. We're a second tier local planning authority within Hertfordshire. And in terms of plan preparation, we have been anticipating the introduction of the new system for a very long time. I've been here a year now, and I thought we'd be well involved with it now, but it looks like we might be on our way with the dropping of all of the information earlier today about the new planning system, and we need to go through that and see what is in store for us with the new plan. But back in 2024, we were preparing a Call for Sites exercise, and the application to round 4 allowed us to access funding to prepare a tool that allowed us to take the whole of the Call for Sites process online. We had an existing relationship with CADCorp, and we used that relationship to work with them to develop the tool. I'll explain a little bit about the tool itself, but also talk about how we've used the continuous funding to develop aspects of the platform further, partly because of an anticipated second Call for Sites exercise that we're hoping to do in 2026, but also to try and use the tool to analyse the submitted sites for their capacity and how we might develop scenarios for the new plan as well. Next slide, please. So the project had 3 phases. So the inception was really concerned with that Call for Sites process and how that would work for us as the local planning authority, but also for those who wish to submit sites to the district. And the ambition at the time was to take it all online and avoid having any other form of communication, whether that's people posting brochures to us or doing it by email or other means outside of the platform we wanted to focus on. So the platform needed to be able to capture the site itself digitally and all of the associated information that we'd require as policy planners to assess those sites and develop the planned strategy. So the plotted sites have been captured as layers within our GIS, and all of the required fields submitted are available within the Call for Sites browser, so we can use that as part of the analysis and the assessment stages. As far as it went, it was really successful, that first phase. We received just over 280 sites within the prescribed period, and all of those were actually plotted within the system alongside the data and the attributes and the questions that we're asking to be submitted. So this meant we were able to understand exactly what we had at the end of the window and could report on these very quickly, particularly to members who wanted to know which sites were coming forward and what was in their patch. So on the whole, the experience for people submitting sites was relatively trouble-free. We didn't have many queries or problems with that. And anybody submitting a site was issued with a unique reference number, so we could communicate with them in future as the plan process went on. And it was a means of also adding them to our local plan database if they wanted to be informed generally about the local plan. Phase 2 has really been a transition between the original funding and the continuous funding. This has been a process of using the submissions to visit sites and develop strategy. We felt that we had to go out and look at all of the sites physically rather than relying on just desktop analysis. Because the data that we've received can be integrated with existing data sets, we can quickly identify the relative merits of each site in relation to defined opportunities and constraints, such as proximity to transport routes or essential services like schools and doctors, and their relationship to identify constraints such as heritage assets, flood risk, etc. And then the final phase is where we are now. We're looking to develop the tool further to understand the differences between gross and net development areas within the sites we have, and to try and develop density scenarios for sites which will assist in bringing forward district development scenarios for the new plan. So that's an overview. Next slide, please, Andy. At the beginning, and I think still now, we anticipate benefits. I mean, we were hoping for time savings through the digitisation process. We were hoping for faster analysis of the sites that we had. We were hoping that it would be faster to run scenarios, all of which would save time within the team. We were hoping for benefits in terms of the detail and integration of the information that we had. So we'd have quick site summary information, which is easy to generate and update and can be drawn from the data that we already have. We're hoping that it would integrate with all existing spatial data, digital data, which we have. We have a Call for Sites browser, which integrates all of our data that's relevant to the process, and we can change analysis for future developments, decisions on spatial strategy. In terms of quality, again, we were hoping for a better output of the work that we were doing, that would be able to see visualizations of the distribution of development across the district and the key constraints, which would help us develop scenarios based on whatever priorities we wanted to have within the plan. We hope that there would be fewer subjective decisions because we'd have objective data at our hands and easy to access, and a better understanding of who is making submissions and could reach the Call for Sites process and get through the process. So landowners and whether developers and whoever else was submitting sites to us. So they were what we anticipated. The next bit is the video. I mean, I think it's 7 minutes. It's going to take us very close to the end. What this video does in that 7 minutes is describe the tool that we've been using to collect the Call for Sites submissions that we've had. It explains the plotting of the sites that the users do for us and the additional information that we wanted through the tool for submitters to give to us, and then the submission process itself. That comes to us in a report card. We can download all of those very, very quickly. The the system will also analyse the sites for nearby constraints and opportunities and list those immediately for us as well, and highlight them in colours as to where they're particularly close or particularly important constraints. But I'll move on for now to the next slide and just talk a little bit about. There you go. Andy can share it after the call. If we can move to the next slide, Andy. So you recall that I've lost it.
Apologies, it's not
That's
helping
all right.
me move on from this video.
So no, I just knew if I'd have tried to use that video, it wouldn't have worked. I know it. So to bring you up to date, the call for sites process has been very successful. We've been very pleased with the output, and it's helped us a lot and saved a lot of time. The first part of the continuous funding was really looking at the tool in a sort of critical friend way with CAD Core, because whilst it gave us an awful lot of information in a format that was really helpful to us, and it saved an awful lot of time, there were some minor issues with it that we've discovered sort of whilst using the data and whilst using the information that we received. So one of the issues was the reference numbers that were given to submitters. They were very complex. It made communicating quite hard between ourselves and people who submitted and promoted sites. It made finding information that was additional to the submissions quite hard as well. So whilst we were using the desk tool, the online tool, to seek submissions and the data that we wanted, we also allowed people to supplement that with, and if they had a brochure for the site or something, they were allowed to upload that as well. So they were loaded separately to the system. Finding those after the process, after the exercise, has been quite hard with 280 submissions. Finding a brochure about a site has been quite tricky. So we've been looking to amend that process. We've been looking to amend the information that the submitter gets after they submitted the site. We've had issues with sites not being in the district or crossing district boundaries that we've had to deal with. We've discovered that there is information that submitters don't really need to submit. We were asking them whether their site was in the Greenbelt, for instance. We already know that. We can do that automatically through the process without the submitter having to tell us that. The same with things like agricultural land grade. Rather than them telling us, we can have a drop-down box, or we can again pull that out of the database. So we've made changes to the existing tool. I think one of the things that we really struggled with was gross and net areas of the site. So in plotting a site, we can get the site area through the system and verify the site area that they think that they are submitting. But when it comes to net development area, we didn't ask them to plot that, and we didn't ask them to define where the net developable area was. So when it comes to assessing sites and developing strategies for the plan, it's been hard to know what the submitter is thinking about in terms of their net developable development area and the number of residential units or other development that they can put within that net developable area, and what the remainder of the site is going to be used for. These have been questions that have cropped up that haven't come through the call for sites exercise. The modification of the tool itself is now completed, and it's ready to go when we do our next call for sites exercise in 2026, and we'll be running a test for that nearer the time. We can move on, Andy. We've also been able to use reports coming out of the system to help with our site visits. I mentioned earlier that we've committed to visit all of the sites. We think that that's necessary in a lot of cases to verify boundaries and look at the context and understand how the site sits and what it looks like at the current time. We have aerial photography and all those sorts of things that Google and things provide us with, but there's nothing like going to a site and having a look. And the system has been able to generate maps for us that we can use either on a tablet — we haven't been using tablets — or as a printout that we can take out on site and check the constraints, the boundaries, the areas of flood risk that have been denoted, where they are, how serious they are, and make notes about the sites themselves, which again help the whole analysis process. They're not very easy to see, these, but the one on the left is a flooding map. One in the middle is the district plan allocations and previous HELAA exercises, which are largely historic as we're doing a new plan. And then the one on the right there is the highlighting of the constraints, the benefits, the opportunities against the criteria that we put into the system to assess the sites, which all comes out automatically. Far too small to read, and I'm afraid my printout that I'm reading from is far too small to read as well, but I can share examples if people want those. Next slide, please. So the next stage, or our current stage, is looking at site constraints and analysis. So it's an extension to the tool that we have, which will enable us to develop a reliable estimate of gross and net developable areas for submitted sites, and from that a reasonable estimate of site capacity that then informs our plan strategy. So whilst we've captured submitters' overall site area and their net developable area, it wasn't always clear how the two measurements have been arrived at by the submitter and how they think they relate to their site. So this has been confusing with the site analysis. And to try to address this, we're developing a cookie cutter tool, which I always say wrongly, cookie cutter tool, which can be applied to sites. So that would allow us to remove absolute constraints from any site, flood risk areas, specific heritage or environmental constraints, and allow any allow consideration of secondary constraints, which we've defined as things like noise, contaminated land, conservation areas, and it gives us a new site area based on those constraints. We intend to use these outputs of the process to estimate density and site capacity based on a better understanding of what constraints exist and how they impact on the site. Given this new site area, we're also looking at how that might be assessed with DM and conservation colleagues, for instance, and how that might influence site design and layout. Next slide, please. So just by way of example, this is a site that we have in the southern part of our district. The red stripy bit in the middle is the site. So this image is centered on the site itself, and you can see various constraints that affect this. There's a pipeline through this particular site, there's a buffer around the pipeline, it's in the green belt, and various other constraints. So what this exercise will do is cookie cut the gross developable area against the constraints, deliver a net developable area which we can apply a density to, and because of the known constraints we can also look at layout and design and those sorts of things to try and get the density as realistic as possible. Next slide, please. And it's a couple of slides left. The final phase, once we've got the cookie cutter tool, we'll be developing strategies and scenarios. So we're using this refined information about our net developable areas, our densities, capacities, possible layout constraints to consider different development scenarios for the plan. We have a moving feast at the moment of possible scenarios that we've started to put together, having a realistic assessment of how much each site can contribute and where clusters of sites might hopefully inform the strategy and provide consultees and co-producers to better input their thinking and more quickly define which strategies are going to work for the district, given the different options that we have. Next slide shows some of the scenarios that we've started to consider. It's very much blue sky thinking. The one at the bottom there is a bit of a migraine for the eyes, but it's a consolidation of all the strategies that we have. We hope to be able to think more broadly about this and improve the quality of support we receive from colleagues dealing with transport and provision of services or heritage or whatever constraint or opportunity exists. We touched on this earlier about getting collaborators and consultees get involved in this process. We have faced difficulties along the way. The main one was the loss of our only GIS officer in the middle of this year, and we haven't been able to replace them yet. But we have found benefits, and I referred to some of them earlier. But we've also found that as a policy team, a team of planners, essentially, and not a team of data specialists, we have had to grapple with the GIS, and we've all learned a little bit how to use it, some more than others. I think that's really helped us to understand what's available to us, what we can do and how we can do it, and think about how these things could be more efficient. And certainly listening to some of the examples that we've had from other people in this group has been helpful as well. And I think it'll give us a greater clarity and resilience going forward. And all of that's been enabled by the funding. So I think that's been really beneficial for us. And that's me, Andy.
Amazing, thanks Richard, and apologies that we didn't have time to show the video, but as mentioned, I'll make sure that gets put onto Slack and on the Hub as well for people to see. Any questions for Richard? We have got a couple of hands up. I am going to call you by your formal title, Stuart. Dr. Stuart.
Sorry, yeah, we set that up on our side. Quick question just around the net developable area. I think we've been trying to do something similar, or we're setting out to do something similar with our project. And the thing that we keep on running into as a bit of an issue is how you deal with constraints that are a little bit more valuable. So for example, with floodplain 2 or floodplain 3, you know, technically we initially wanted to simply say, well, you can't build anything in floodplain 3, but reality is you can if you put the right mitigation measures.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of been the question of, how have you dealt with that in terms of those constraints that are prefer you not to build, but could be worked around if you put the right measures in place?
Yeah, I think that is an issue for us. I think one of the things we've struggled with is getting the information out that's really helpful to us without overcomplicating the questions we're asking it. I mean, we're working at quite a strategic level at the moment. We still have lots of information and evidence that we're gathering that will form our final strategy. So we've got a greenbelt assessment underway, we've got a retail and town centres work underway, we've got a village hierarchy reassessment that's underway. All of these things will inform our strategy. So the way we've dealt with it, and with this cookie cutter thing that I mentioned, is that it's just a list of primary constraints. We have a list of constraints that are absolutes, that, you know, at this moment we are assuming no development would take place within them, and that includes, you know, floodplain, flood area 3. It includes Ramsar sites. It includes registered parks and gardens. Those sorts of things. We're just assuming at the moment they are absolute constraints, and then once we've started to develop the strategies that we have and understand the options that are available and how the sites contribute to the overall strategy, we will then work with the likes of the Environment Agency to see, you know, how flexible some of those absolute constraints are. So we're not really at that point yet. We will come to that point at a more detailed level, and hopefully we can use the data that we've got on our growing expertise to do that more efficient than we might think we might do it now. So at the moment we're trying to keep it simple. It's the same with density. We've got the same issue around, you know, when we've got a net developable area and we're applying a density to it, what is that density? How do we work out the density within a particular location? And I found we can go around in circles trying to work out density and trying to be as accurate as possible with it, but at the end of the day we want something quick and dirty at a strategic level, so we make basic assumptions, I think, and that's what we're doing at the moment, and we'll dig into it when we're at that stage of developing our strategy.
Thanks, that's really helpful.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Richard. Duncan's dropped a message, well, a question in the chat, Richard, just about ownership, but I'm aware that we're running at 1 minute over, so if you're happy just to go back to in the chat, that would be amazing. I will finish this up, but a huge thank you to Richard, Sarah and Joe as well, two really great presentations today. So thank you for taking the time out to pull those together and sharing with us today. It really was really good. Right, last couple of bits from me and I'll let you go. So reports and month notes are due this Friday. Sorry to be that boring person and keep droning on at you. But these should be your last ones if you're on track to deliver by the 19th of December. This should be your last month note and report. So any issues, please do let me know. The winter ODP event is still open for registration, so if you haven't registered, we'd love to see as many of you there in London on the 11th of December. We also have the Geovation show and tell on the 3rd of December. I will pop a link into our Slack channel. Please do register for that as well, because that should be a great session. And then also Another very boring and moany reminder from me that final MLE and blueprints are due on the 19th of December. And that is it. Thank you all so much for your time today. Lovely to see you all. Please carry on the conversations and questions following this. And if you do need anything from me, then please let me know. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers all. Bye.